I'm currently working on the B female Lucha Libre wrestler. In particular, I'm working on doing the sides and back of her hair. And then what I'm likely to do next is do her arms and then her sides. Earlier in the day, I drew and colored in her feet, including some black wrappings. That many wrestlers have. They're typically white, but they can be any color, I think, as long as the wrappings are there. And then before that, starting from when I got up today, which was about maybe around 9:30 in the morning. After I initially fell back asleep, after getting up around 6 in the morning, up until the afternoon, I worked on the front of her wrestling top, which I tried to make resemble as much as possible an anatomically correct. I think it might be called thorax or abdomen of a bee. Basically, the abdomen and bottom of a bee. Since this Lucha Libre's wrestler's costume is meant to be based off of a bee. Essentially, from that point, I was picking up from where I had left off from yesterday, and I spent considerable time thinking about this pretty complex pattern in order to get all the nuances that I got of a real live bee from a short 3D animation. It's currently 7:54 p.m. And it was in the early to mid-afternoon, somewhere between 1 and 3 p.m., in which I finished the rather complex pattern of the wrestling top for this B Lucha Libre wrestler, or at least more complex than I did for the Ladybug one. What I've done most recently, I haven't colored in the toenails yet because maybe I might want to save that as a sort of easy thing to finish so that I only finish it as the last thing to ensure that it's actually finished when I declare it finished, and don't repeat the mistake I made with the penguin when I declared it finished only to realize I had forgotten his eyebrows. So I had to quickly do that and then change the timestamp. And not too long ago, maybe about an hour ago, I went on Iron Rage for the first time in months probably. And I still have my old account through the launcher. The thing with the Iron Rage, it's good as a multiplayer game like Elvenar and Queen's Blade Limit Break. But I'm already preoccupied as is with Elvenar and Queen's Blade Limit Break. And I don't really want to put more games on top of that. In terms of work on the first raw video file of the 99th Dan Hamming episode, which is something new I created in order to add more scenes. The working video is probably around 17 to 18 minutes right now. I'm at a point where I'm ultimately going to have to do something that's going to require considerable amounts of work, possibly involve Wrapper offline in order to do, since this new scene I'm working on briefly shows the clothes Dan Hamming ends up wearing in the aftermath of the incident that happens in the episode involving the trio and both Kyle the Uber driver and Caesar's dad, Michael. And this new scene is just meant to establish that Dan Hamming brought those clothes. What I'm doing currently with the 99th Dan Hamming episode is to try essentially sort of tying up loose ends in a way within the episode itself. Basically establishing things so that they don't come out of nowhere. But at this point, before I do that, I would like to finish the B female Lucha Libre wrestler. As of now, I've pretty much gotten the front finished. But as for Iron Rage, it's harder, takes more effort to go on a launcher-based multiplayer game, since that requires entering in a password and login. It's something that isn't the case for multiplayer games that are still web browser based, like Elvenar and Queen's Blade Limit Break. I think one thing I noticed today is that, in a way, I ended up getting more work done when I got up in the morning as compared to either getting up at noon or in the early afternoon, or even the mid to late afternoon. On the very worst sleep schedule days. Around 3:30 p.m., as I was working on the wrappings for essentially the ankles or so of the B female Lucha Libre wrestler, Mom called within the house. Basically, she announced that she had finished some eggs for me. For me to have essentially for lunch. And with those eggs, I had a couple of sticks of mild cheddar. As for the eggs, she said that she overdid them, which, yeah, I noticed that the yolks were more hard-boiled than runny like they usually are for over easy eggs, or I mean sunny side up eggs is the term I'm familiar with. But those eggs were still good. Even the part that had a crispy plastic texture. And I ended up having a glass of whole milk with those eggs. I ate the eggs while drinking the glass of milk. I brought those couple sticks of mild cheddar up into my room. Because by that point, I was in the process of listening to a roughly hour-long, highly edited video. And by highly edited, in this case, I mean it must have taken hundreds of hours using a program like Camtasia Studio 2019 in order to make all of the visuals. on a video about Floyd Collins. And how he got stuck in a cave and all the rescue efforts that were made at Sand Cave. It was all pretty interesting. I think by that point I was roughly 45 minutes into my first listening to that video. I ended up listening to it twice today, in a sort of way. One thing that struck me was that this happened in 1925. And even though this was a little less than a century ago, it seemed like an entirely different time. And it made me think about how different things may be in a decade, at least briefly. And prior to that video being recommended to me off of YouTube's sidebar, I hadn't even heard about this story. One parallel I had heard of was the story from John Jones. If I recall correctly, I think back in 2006, he got stuck in the Nutty Putty Cave. Yeah, until now, I had never known. Until today, I had never known there were any parallels to this other than one other story that I found out about through a YouTube video. I'm currently in the process of upgrading this training grounds military building since I need it in order to complete this side quest that I believe is part of the side quest for the elementals chapter. In terms of the 99th Dan Hamming episode, I only did the absolute bare minimum amount of work on it, pretty much. Which was to copy and paste a semi-transparent or semi-opaque black rectangle prop that I used to depict darkness in a scene, such as when it's nighttime. And I copied and pasted that prop onto a scene that didn't have that prop, because I had deleted it the other day in order to copy and paste props used to prevent, in order to keep the background of the windows within a car interior scene from moving, in order to depict a point in which the car is stationary. I also recall around 1 p.m. I had a bag of baked Lay's original potato chips that I found in our pantry cupboard. Yeah, but it actually looks more like a closet. Found it buried within one of our shelves. And I had that bag with a cup of coffee that, to prepare, I simply just had to plug in our coffee maker after getting a coffee cup from my room. Yeah, because Mom had done most of the work involved in preparing our coffee maker to make a cup of coffee for me. Of which I am grateful. I also have I'm in a good fellowship on Elvenar. That cup of coffee and that baked bag of chips were pretty good.